Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.
Welcome to Hong Kong Confidential. I'm Jules Hannaford and I'm your host. I'm an Australian woman and I've been living in Hong Kong for many years. I'm a mother, a teacher, an author, and I want to share my wisdom and the wisdom of others with you. Thanks for joining me and I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Confidants, I just want to tell you about a book that I've written called Fool Me Twice. It's my memoir and it's a story of how I was scammed and assaulted while online dating. It was a difficult book to write because I really had to overcome the shame of my choices. But I wanted to do it so that I could help other people not get caught in the same trap that I was. At the end of the book, there are a whole lot of suggestions of what people need to look out for and how they can date safely online. My book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble online, and it's also in Hong Kong bookstores. Here is a promo for my book. I hope you enjoy it.
From life on a farm in rural Australia, where wide open spaces made a young woman yearn to know what was beyond her country town. She moved to the city, became a mother, and found her dream career which took her across the world. But still, something's missing. In her search for love, she traveled far, trusted deeply. She wanted so badly to find someone that she almost lost herself in the process and learned some hard lessons along the way. Fool Me Twice, a new memoir by Jules Hannaford. Available on Amazon.
Today I'm here with Candace Castro. Candace, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Jules, for having me.
I'm very excited to talk to you on my podcast. I actually saw you speak at the Women's Empowerment Forum in Hong Kong recently, and I was captivated by your story. It's really exciting to have you here.
Thank you very much.
In your profile, you call yourself a Tai Tai Yogini. How did you come up with that name and what is it?
I came up with that name based on my childhood upbringing and cultural conditioning. Back when I was growing up, the pinnacle of success for a woman was to become a Tai Tai, which I loosely translate as a corporate wife. And my work is mainly for women who, for example, she may have a function in a corporate environment. She may be doing very well at work, but on a personal level, she feels restless and unfulfilled. So it's not about helping her get better at her job. It's about her as a person. It's also for women who might be business owners or entrepreneurs and who also on a personal level might be feeling bored, restless, and secretly asking themselves, is this all there is to life? And it's also for women who are married to men with a high function in a large corporate environment with all its attendant responsibilities and commitments and that role entails. But on a personal level, she may feel empty, restless, purposeless, and secretly guilty for feeling that way.
Do you find there's a typical age group that this sort of feeling manifests in? Because I'm imagining it might be around the 50s and around menopause, but is it also in the 30s?
I'm finding nowadays that there are younger women coming to this point in their lives. I would say people that I'm seeing are in their late 30s to late 40s.
Okay, right. And I just want to clarify, the word Tai Tai is a Chinese word. I always thought it meant somebody who doesn't work and that their husbands support them. Is that not correct? Because you're talking about women in the business world and the corporate world who are feeling unfulfilled.
Yes, I think that Tai Tai traditionally means someone who doesn't have to work. But in this day and age, there are lots of Tai Tais who have their own businesses. They might be flipping properties. They might have, a florist, a shop somewhere. They might own a cafe or a cake shop. I think that we've sort of moved beyond that paradigm a bit.
Awesome, I understand. These women are searching for something, they're feeling a bit displaced and a bit like they're really not fulfilling their true potential. What kind of things do you do with them to help them find themselves?
Well, the first thing that I would say is befriend your mind.
Oh, I love that. What do you mean by that?
All our unhappiness starts with the thoughts that are created in our head. And a lot of our ideas about who we are is from our childhood upbringing and societal conditioning. If you can recognize the kinds of thoughts that you habitually have, then you can become aware that you're doing that, and there are tools to help you break that habit.
You're really talking about combating negative self-talk.
A lot of it is combating negative self-talk, and once you start to befriend your mind, you realize that your sense of displacement and disconnection is really because you're disconnected from your own soul, your own true nature.
Lovely. So what tools do you use to connect back to the soul and the true nature? Yoga obviously is one of them.
Yes. In particular, Kundalini Yoga. That's what I teach. I coach women through the process because it is a process.
Explain to me a little bit more about what Kundalini Yoga is. How does it differ from other forms of yoga?
Kundalini Yoga is known as the yoga of awareness, and it's meant for the householder, which means it's for busy people like you and me who lead very busy lives. We don't have time to retreat to a cave up in the Himalayas somewhere and sit there and meditate until we become enlightened. It's for people like businessmen, housewives, working people. It's for your everyday man and woman. And there are specific tools for any condition that you might want to heal, such as healing a broken heart, releasing negative self-talk, anxiety, fear of the future, fear of the unknown. You might want to do something more physical, like strengthen your core or develop very strong legs or increase your lung capacity. You name it, there's a tool for it.
Oh, fantastic. So it really is a physical and spiritual and emotional
And
support
mental.
and mental support mechanism.
Yeah, and it's all in one.
And it's all interlinked. Wow, it sounds fascinating.
It is.
Do people come to you and you kind of do an assessment of what they need and which areas they need to develop or connect, and then you tailor-make the sessions that you're doing with them?
I don't work with everybody. I work mostly with the women that I described earlier. Basically women who are feeling very disconnected and very unfulfilled, purposeless, pointless, and don't know what to do about it. And they're longing for actually someone to support them, guide them, and understand what they're going through.
Have you seen some women make huge transformations going through this process with you?
Oh, absolutely. Kundalini Yoga is known as taking a jet plane to your destination.
Oh, I love that. That's
It's
great.
fast.
How did you get into Kundalini Yoga? What led you to this direction of life?
Well, I like to call it my come to Jesus moment. It was the perfect storm. In 2012, in that space of 1 year, I had to move to another country. My children left home. I had to nurse my mother through cancer. My mother passed away that same year. And months after she passed away, my third husband issued me with divorce papers.
All in 1 year?
All in this 1 year.
So that's trauma on top of trauma.
Yes.
How did that impact you at the time?
I went numb, which is one of my default mechanisms. I felt like rabbit in the headlights. I had no idea what was going on. I felt like a complete failure. My life felt completely pointless, and I just didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. How am I supposed to be living? What's going on? Why is everything just suddenly gone to shit, basically?
Yeah, everything fell apart at once.
Yes.
Did that mean you had a massive identity crisis?
Definitely.
How did you discover Kundalini Yoga and pull yourself out of this hole that you were in?
I discovered it by accident, and a lot of practitioners will tell you that you don't find Kundalini Yoga, it finds you.
Oh, right. That's spooky. Like it's meant to be.
Yes.
Oh, that's really nice.
So while I was looking after my mother, I only had 2 hours off on a Friday afternoon. And there was a yoga studio around the corner. I had been practicing yoga for a long time at that point, and I needed some self-care. So I went round the corner on the Friday afternoon, and the only class on was something called Kundalini Yoga. And I thought, what's that? Well, it doesn't matter. This is the only time I have. And from the moment they started tuning in to begin the class, I felt like I had found my home. I felt like I had come home.
And what was it about it that made you feel that comfortable and like you were in the right place?
I wouldn't say it was comfortable. I wept through the entire class. I literally had a meltdown on that mat.
So massive emotional release.
Yes.
What triggered that? Was it the movement, the teacher,
a combination of the music and the fact that the entire class is done with your eyes closed, because they want you focusing on what's going on inside you, not outside you. They don't want you looking around and getting distracted.
Oh, I really like that concept. I love shutting my eyes when I'm in a yoga class, but I can't do it very much because I've got to watch the teacher. Do you know what I mean? Like I've got to see what's going on because I don't know it well enough.
Right.
But I can recognize that when my eyes are shut in yoga, it is far more powerful.
Yes. You don't need to look at the teacher because we give very specific and continual verbal instruction.
Right. You can actually just follow from the words that are spoken. You don't need to see what's going on.
Correct.
That's very cool. You must have had a lot of grief that you were dealing with at time based on the relationship breakup and your mother being unwell and passing. This yoga a way to deal with the grief? Did it help you through that process?
It definitely did, because it propelled me to go to India and live in an ashram for 6 weeks.
Did you? Wow.
Yes, to become certified as a yoga teacher. And this connected me to a global community of like-minded individuals. And then the thing that really catapulted my growth was that's how I met my mentor and coach in this community. I actually met him at a Kundalini Yoga festival in Hong Kong.
Oh, really?
Yes.
How great. Do you still work with him today?
Yes, I do.
And what does he do? Does he keep you authentic in your practice? Does he train you? Does he keep you connected to yourself? How does it work with this mentor?
Basically, the coach is your mirror. He's holding up a mirror for you to see who you are. As he likes to put it, chip away everything that's not you. So you get to understand a lot of your conditioning and that these are just habitual patterns that perhaps no longer serve you.
Oh, that's so interesting. I understand that you really were involved in some sort of abusive relationships when you were younger. And, you know, you mentioning these habitual patterns leads me on to this question. Tell me a bit about those relationships and then how you've been able to break those patterns in your life.
Back in the day when I was growing up, abuse wasn't really a concept. Corporal punishment and shaming was commonplace. The paradigm in those days was spare the rod and spoil the child.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Just to interrupt, can we just have your cultural background for the listeners?
I'm the third generation of my family, born in Hong Kong. And culturally, we're known as Portuguese. But in reality, I have 7 different mixtures. I'm a true Eurasian. I don't feel any connection to Portugal or the Portuguese culture. I can't even speak Portuguese. Culturally, I definitely am a Hong Konger through and through.
Do you identify as Asian or Chinese at all, or just more of a Eurasian Hong Konger?
It's a very interesting question that you ask, because most of my life I grew up feeling very isolated, not really belonging to one race or another. And back when I was growing up, it wasn't cool to be mixed, not like it is today.
That's so true. You were a third culture kid before the term was invented.
Correct.
Right.
It set up in me a yearning to belong. And I was constantly seeking others' approval and acceptance.
Right. Then going back to your story, you had this kind of spare the rod, spoil the child upbringing where there was a lot of shame and I imagine not much sharing of feelings and exploring of your inner self.
No, none at all.
Where did you go from there in your childhood?
I didn't really have anyone to turn to in my childhood because when you're a child, everything just is. You don't know that there's an alternative.
That's so true. Yeah. You just know your own reality.
Exactly. What it did was it set me up to feel not good enough, to be an outsider, to be different and just wanting to belong. So a lot of my self-worth was tied up in what others thought of me. It was more about how the other people felt about me than how I felt about myself.
And so many people are like that. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there that can absolutely identify with that way of thinking. And then did that lead to you seeking approval through relationships with toxic partners?
I wouldn't say they were toxic partners because in my quest for approval and acceptance, I made a lot of choices to have relationships with people based on how they felt about me. I didn't question whether I felt the same way. Oh, wow, he loves me. Oh, this is great. So I'm okay.
Right, but you didn't necessarily feel the same love or the same feelings that they had, but you were considering them more than yourself.
Exactly. And It was more like, if they love me, then I love them.
Exactly. Okay. Tell me about your first relationship.
My first relationship was with my daughter's father. I was in my mid-20s. He was an artist, and I really admired his mind. We could talk about anything, and he was kind of like a best friend rather than someone I fell madly in love with.
Did that end acrimoniously or was it quite fine?
No, it was very civilized. Very, very civilized. We're still good friends to this day.
Oh, that's lovely. Isn't that great being the father of your daughter as well? That's
exactly.
Excellent. And then your next relationship?
My second relationship probably impacted me the most because based on my conditioning, all the right boxes were ticked. Wealthy husband, great big house, helpers, drivers, anything and everything that money could buy.
Which a lot of people dream about having that, don't they?
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily make you happy.
It doesn't. And that's why I felt guilty and lost because, well, I had finally achieved what everybody on the planet wants. Financial freedom, beautiful children, good provider. So how come my life felt so empty and pointless?
Do you know why it felt empty and pointless?
Because I think it was, I didn't know who I was and I didn't really know what I wanted. I was just following a preset script.
Which you'd been doing as a child as well. So these are these behaviors that were ingrained in you.
Right. Our childhood conditioning.
And then how did that end? Was that an acrimonious ending?
Let's just say it wasn't a conscious uncoupling.
Right, okay. You weren't, what's her name? The girl that took
Gwyneth
Paltrow. You weren't Gwyneth Paltrow.
It ended with a lot of bitterness, frustration, and regret for both parties, basically because our individual expectations were not being met.
And did that impact your self-esteem and your self-worth, and did it disintegrate somewhat at that time?
Oh, definitely. That was the beginning of my unraveling.
Right. And then came the illness and all of that kind of thing.
Yes.
You weren't actually in abusive relationships necessarily. No. You were just in relationships that weren't necessarily right, or you weren't feeling good about yourself. You didn't know who you were and you weren't happy in your own skin kind of thing.
Yes. So I would say that the abuse I suffered was self-abuse.
Ah, interesting.
Through my negative self-talk and my inner critic. Because I was brought up a very strict Catholic upbringing. And back in the day when I was growing up, our roles were very rigidly defined with what I'd like to call the tyranny of shoulds.
As in typical gender roles of you're a woman, you're going to grow up, you're going to get married, someone will take care of you don't need to get educated, all of that kind of thing. And that can have a huge impact because, you know, young women today are not, thankfully, not getting those messages. And hopefully then they're coming into adulthood with a much stronger sense of self than this generation necessarily did.
Exactly, which is why I find it so interesting that these young women are starting to have what is traditionally known as the midlife crisis.
But it's interesting that you went through a long crisis, really, before you found yourself through Kundalini Yoga. I imagine makes you a great teacher and a great mentor for these women who are feeling similarly displaced because you've walked in their shoes.
Correct.
Do you find that that means that you're able to really understand and share your wisdom and help them in a much greater way than you would have if you hadn't gone through everything you've been through?
Most definitely. You can't teach what you don't know.
Exactly.
Right?
That's why the best addiction counselors are the ones who had addictions and then have recovered.
Correct.
That's what makes you so amazing at what you do.
Thank you,
That's
Jules.
brilliant.
And not only that, it makes me very compassionate because I see where they are and I know there's a way through. And I can give them the tools that they need, but it's self-initiation. I can give you the tools, but I can't do it for you.
People have got to really have the buy-in and then do the homework kind
Correct.
of thing. And would that be practicing yoga, meditation, perhaps even flipping your thought processes, like catching yourself with negative self-talk and then doing the opposite?
I wouldn't say doing the opposite. The first job is to notice your habitual thoughts. As you know, I was a speaker recently at the Women's Empowerment Forum. As I was talking to the organizer, I could witness all these thoughts going through my head like, you can't do that. You can't say you'll be a speaker. You can't stand in front of a room in front of all these people. You've never done that before. You're not inspiring. Your life's been a mess.
How interesting. It's called imposter syndrome.
Right. And finally, I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this one. I found myself saying yes. And then it was, what am I going to wear? I don't want to look fat.
Yes, we all
Right?
have that, don't we?
Isn't that a typical refrain and this constant, do I look fat?
Absolutely, yes. And then how were you able to overcome that? Because your speech was really, really inspirational and was actually my favorite of the day.
Oh, thank you,
And
Jules.
I really, really loved it. And I found it you're very, very captivating as a speaker. How were you able to turn that around then?
With the help of the work I've been doing with my mentor and the tools that I've learned, very valuable tools in Kundalini Yoga, I was able to recognize when my negative mind was doing it rah-rah in the background and then not buying into it and feeling afraid, but doing it anyway. Because if I don't, then I denied myself an opportunity to grow and to expand as a person and to go beyond our self-imposed limitations.
Exactly. And how did you feel afterwards?
I felt really amazing. Like, yes, I did something fantastic today. But I was so scared the whole time leading up to the talk.
Isn't that amazing? Because you seemed so calm, so confident, and I could never have guessed that that was your first time public speaking. I would never have guessed that.
Thank you.
I thought you were a professional public speaker.
Oh my gosh. No, not at all. It's called practice, practice, practice.
So did you do that? You practiced a lot, and this is one of the ways that you were able to get up and do it well.
Yes. And my mentor taught me, my coach taught me how to step out of my comfort zone, how to visualize myself doing this and doing it well, not just doing it, but doing it well.
Can you talk to me a little bit more about visualization? How can that help us?
We know that it's a very effective tool because a lot of athletes have been taught visualization, right? They're taught to see themselves
On the podium.
or see themselves being the first through the finish line, see themselves scoring that winning goal. My coach taught me to visualize a circle and from where I am, to step into that circle. So getting out of my comfort zone and into that unknown. And then visualizing how I'd like to be viewed. Maybe have an image of someone that I admire, or that's the image I'd like to project. And then I just constantly did that every day as I was practicing my speech. I would do that and then practice my speech.
Wow. So did you have that speech pretty much memorized?
Yes, I did.
Did you? That's so interesting. I totally kind of just had dot points and winged mine, but I don't think you were there for mine when I did mine at the event. But it was quite a different approach. But I guess as a teacher, I'm up in front of people speaking all the time.
Yes.
So I'm much more used to it.
Oh no, I definitely had to memorize my speech. And I was even holding it in my hand because I thought, please don't have a senior moment in the middle of the speech.
But you know, that's sort of a comfort thing. Like even taking your notes into a job interview can just help by having them in your possession. It gives you a sense of calm and comfort, knowing that they're there, even though you don't necessarily have to look at them because you didn't look at them.
No, exactly.
So that's amazing. Tell me a little bit about your life as a single mother. What's that like, and how have you managed juggling all of your roles?
It was different each time. The first time I was living in Canada, where it's not the norm to have helpers, and I was running my own business. So it was incredibly challenging and stressful because not only was I running my business, I was also doing all the household chores, the school runs, extracurricular activities, the laundry, the ironing, the grocery shopping. I mean,
the fixing everything, you know, the fixing the fuses and putting the petrol in the car and paying all the bills and doing all these things that sometimes are traditionally the masculine roles within a relationship. I'm a single mum as well. You know, we have to do all of that and keep the whole family afloat.
Exactly. And I was lucky the first time around because I had my own business. So I had my own financial means.
And that does make a difference, doesn't it? It must be super hard for those women out there who are struggling financially to manage.
Yes,
and my heart goes out to them.
And I think that they are the true heroes in this society. They are the true heroes. I mean, I loved being a mother and I loved my work, but my life felt really pointless. It's like, where's the fun?
Where's the time for me?
And there was no time for me. I was overworked, overstressed, worried all the time about how I was going to meet all these financial obligations. It just felt like one never-ending round of financial pressure.
How did that impact you on an emotional level? Like, did you feel depressed or anxious or stressed, or did you cry? Did you get angry? Did it mean that you didn't have control of your emotions or anything like that? Or did you just put one foot in front of the other and get on with it?
Basically the latter. I learned one of my default mechanisms is to go numb.
As you mentioned, so that was a time that you did that.
And I developed a lot of inner strength. And my upbringing, it was always about the other person, not about me. So what I needed never even crossed my mind.
And then your next single motherhood adventure, you had 2 or 3 children then?
2.
2.
The second time around, it was much easier. I was living in Hong Kong and I had a wonderful helper. So all that physical stuff was taken care of. But as you know, as a single mom, you're not just mom. You're also father, teacher, guidance, mentor,
chauffeur.
role model.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're more than just mom. You have a lot of different roles to play for your child. And for me, the second time around was a more internal process. It was more about how can I maintain my inner equilibrium so that I can get through this divorce and get through what I'm going through and make good decisions for myself and my children, not to come to wild swings of emotion.
And did you find Kundalini Yoga while your children were still living with you? Oh,
no,
it was afterwards.
It was after when everybody left.
Oh, isn't that funny? Do you have regrets that you didn't find it earlier in that area because it might have helped with parenthood, or is that something you haven't considered?
I haven't really considered it because to me, hindsight's 20/20 vision. I did the very best I could at the time, whatever awareness I had at that time.
Yes, we can all have great wisdom with hindsight. It's very easy to look back, and I do it as well, and look back and I can clearly see my mistakes and where I went wrong and how I could have improved things, especially given that I had my first child at 23. I was super young, and in that day and age, 23 is like the equivalent of 16 now. Do you know what I mean? Teenagers are much more worldly wise than I was when I was younger. At the same time, I guess there's no point having regrets because you can't change anything.
And you wouldn't be who you are today.
And they wouldn't be who they are today either.
Exactly. It's more empowering to try to look for the gifts in your suffering and turn those gifts into wisdom.
Yes.
Rather than beat yourself up with the would've, could've, should've.
Sure. I think that's great advice for anybody because you can always still look forward and you can always still make changes or improve. Or I think one of the things I'm doing at the moment is a lot of sort of introspective work and healing and, you know, trying to make myself a better person and looking more at my health now that I'm getting older. And I think that that's quite an exciting time in my life. And there's so much to be gained from that. And this is where the Kundalini Yoga can really, really make a huge impact. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How do you now live a life full of joy, purpose, and love?
Well, my top priority is my daily spiritual practice and my scheduled sessions with my coach. I can't even begin to enumerate the benefits of working one-on-one with someone who has navigated the unknown terrain that you're about to embark on. And my daily practice is very important to me. And the beauty with Kundalini Yoga is I said there's a tool for every condition you would like to address. So your practice can take anywhere from 1 minute to 1 hour of your day, depending on what it is you would like to address.
Just to give us a little bit of a picture, what are some of these tools that you're talking about?
Well, for example, there's a meditation called Meditation for Perspective and Emotional Balance. And basically you sit there and you breathe in through your left nostril and out through your right with your eyes closed. And you sit there and breathe for 15 minutes.
Great.
And you feel so calm and your thoughts are much clearer after that.
What is the value of meditation? How can it impact a person's life for someone who's never tried it before?
It's also a process. And in a way, it's like giving yourself a mental shower. You take a shower every day to clear your body. So meditation is like clearing your mind.
What a brilliant analogy. That's great.
And it's also the way where you encounter your mind. That's how you befriend your mind. I remember when I first started meditating, the first time I sat there with my eyes closed in silence, I was horrified at what was going on in my head that I had never noticed before.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think we think of meditation as having to empty your head of every single thought, but you don't actually have to, do you? You just can sit with your thoughts, or you can try to reframe your thoughts, or you can focus on a particular thing, can't you?
Well, in Kundalini Yoga, the first step is to recognize that your brain's just doing its job by thinking. And you just notice each thought and let it go by. Don't get attached to any one particular thought and go down the rabbit hole with it. Because you know what that can be like. You'll obsess about something and then, oh, and he did this and she said that. And it just compounds on itself. You don't want to do that. You want to just recognize the thought. And then after a while, when you've been meditating regularly, you'll see that there's a habitual pattern.
Ah, that's interesting. And then you can work on breaking that pattern once you recognize it.
Correct. It's not about trying to stop yourself from thinking or to not have any emotion, because you'll notice that when you lock onto a certain thought, after a while, when you're experienced with meditating, you'll realize, oops, I just got sidetracked. Let me get back to, and in Kundalini Yoga, there'll be a breath pattern. There might be a mantra. There's a certain mudra, which is a hand gesture. You might have to be holding your hands or your arms a certain way. Then you just bring yourself back to that focus and let it go.
Oh, brilliant. When you were mentioning earlier about doing your spiritual work or going on your spiritual journey, is that meditation a part of that? And what else is a part of your spiritual journey?
My journey also involves me improving my certification. I'm also designing a program specifically for the women that I'm meant to serve, to help get them from A to B.
Do you work with women on Skype, or is it all in person? And do you work in Hong Kong or in Canada mostly?
I work in both places. And for example, when I'm in Hong Kong, the women I work with in Canada are given a specific meditation to do that's tailored for them. And then they have to email me every 10 days as kind of like a journal, a diary, what's been going on. And then I can monitor where they're at and write back.
How valuable is journaling as a well-being practice?
Oh, very valuable, because there's an analogy that, you know, when you're swimming towards the horizon, it feels like you're never getting there. You just feel like you're efforting and you're still in the same place. We forget to look back to see how far we've swum from the shore. And the journal can be that for you. You can look back and see, wow, my thoughts have really changed over time, or wow, that's what I used to do and I'm doing this differently now. It's like a reference point for you.
Yeah, so that's a way of being more sort of proud or appreciative of what you've been able to achieve rather than having that negative self-talk.
Right. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm just hamster on a wheel.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Candace, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you to work with you, how could they do that?
They can email me at info@Tai Yogini. And I'll just repeat here that my program is not ready yet, but if they would send me an email, I'll be very happy to notify them as soon as it's available.
Brilliant. Candace, thank you so much for coming on my podcast and sharing your spiritual and your emotional journey with us. It's been so fascinating. And I'm sure that my listeners are really going to get loads out of it and feel quite inspired to work on themselves and feel better about themselves and be proud of who they are, because that's really what we all should be doing.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Jules.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And for my listeners out there, if this is a podcast that you've really enjoyed and you think that somebody else could benefit from Candace's wisdom, please could you share it with them? Please could you rate and review us on iTunes, so that will get my podcast up the iTunes charts and get people more aware of Candace and the work that she does, and just help people think about ways that they can improve their own lives, which is really, really lovely. If we can make a difference to some of our listeners out there, that's brilliant, isn't it?
It is.
Candace, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Jules.
So that brings us to the end of another Hong Kong Confidential podcast. I'm Jules Hannaford. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me again next week. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please can you go to iTunes to rate and review it. I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me at jules@hongkongconfidential.net, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hong Kong Confidential. If you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, it's at Jules Hannaford. I would love to hear from you.
Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.